All right, let's discuss. Could you steal an American presidential election? And if you wanted to do it, how would you do it? This, of course, is in the context that Donald Trump says Joe Biden stole the 2020 election, while in reality, it is Donald Trump who tried to steal it. We're going to look at Joe Biden's win. We'll look at Donald Trump's claims about what Biden supposedly did. We'll look at Donald Trump's failed attempt to steal 2020. And then, maybe most importantly, could a presidential election be stolen? What could Trump try this year if that's what he wanted to do, which I think is obvious that he does want to do? So let's start with the facts. Joe Biden won the 2020 presidential election by more than 7 million votes in the popular vote and secured more than 300 electoral votes. Trump and his supporters insist that Trump really won. There was voter fraud. But of course, every major investigation has shown that Joe Biden's win was legitimate. There was no credible evidence to suggest large-scale fraud or manipulation. States with close results like Arizona, Georgia, Pennsylvania recounted ballots both by hand and machine and found no issues that would have altered the outcome. The U.S. Department of Justice, under Trump's own Attorney General Bill Barr, investigated allegations of fraud and concluded there was no evidence of widespread fraud that could have changed the election results in even a single state. Dozens of lawsuits were dismissed for lack of evidence. Trump's legal team and allies filed over 60 lawsuits in multiple states trying to overturn the results. The vast majority were dismissed by judges for lack of evidence. Trump likes to claim these were only dismissed for standing, but that isn't true. In many cases, it was Trump-appointed judges rejecting these lawsuits, really undercutting the claim that a Biden-controlled or influenced judiciary had it in for Trump. The Supreme Court, with a 6-3 conservative majority, refused to hear cases aimed at overthrowing the election, signaling that even Trump-friendly justices found the challenges baseless. Audits and recounts reaffirmed the results. In Georgia, where Biden won by about 12,000 votes, the state conducted a full-hand recount of all ballots, and the recount confirmed Joe Biden's victory. Arizona's controversial audit, carried out by a pro-Trump group, ultimately found even more votes for Biden than initially counted, reinforcing that Biden really did win. Election officials, including many Republicans, testified under oath that the election was free, fair, and secure, and claims of widespread fraud just did not materialize under scrutiny. This now brings us to what Trump did to try to become president despite having lost the election. Trump directly pressured election officials in key swing states to alter the certified results. He called Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, urging him to find 11,780 votes, just enough to overturn Joe Biden's lead in the state. "I need 11,000 votes. Give me a break," Trump said on that now infamous phone call. In other states like Michigan and Pennsylvania, Trump's allies sought to influence state legislators to decertify election results or appoint alternate electors, hoping to bypass the will of the voters. And Trump's lawyers, led by Rudy Giuliani and Sidney Powell, tried to challenge the election results through these baseless legal arguments, including claims that voting machines were rigged, ballots tampered with, dead people voting in droves. The only thing Rudy was able to accomplish with these hearings was to spread COVID to people when he himself had it. One of Trump's most disturbing tactics was to push for fake electors. His allies tried to submit alternate slates of electors in swing states that Biden won, hoping the electors would be counted on January 6th instead of the legitimate Biden electors. Many people ended up criminally charged for getting involved in this, as they should be. Trump pressured Vice President Pence to reject certified electoral votes during January 6th's joint session of Congress, which would have effectively nullified the election. And when Pence refused, saying he doesn't have the constitutional authority to overturn the election, Trump turned to his base and incited them to take action on January 6th. Of course, we now know that Trump's months of false claims about a stolen election culminated in the violent attack on the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021. His supporters having been fed lies about the rigged election, stormed the Capitol in an attempt to stop the certification of Biden's win. So now I want to talk about the ways that Trump claimed Biden stole it and explain why these are both untrue, but silly ways to try to steal an election if that's what you wanted to do. Trump and his allies claim that dead people cast ballots in large numbers during the 2020 election. Now, in reality, voter rolls are regularly updated. Instances of deceased people being sent ballots are rare and flagged. And remember that just because you send a deceased person a ballot, because the records haven't yet been updated that they are deceased, as long as they don't vote, which obviously they don't because they're dead, or no one else fills out their ballot and sends it in, there's not really an issue other than a clerical one. Any isolated cases of votes cast in the name of deceased people were investigated, found to have no impact on the overall results. And these cases, as I said, are just clerical errors that get fixed when caught. Trump's legal team claimed that voting machines, especially those made by Dominion voting systems, were rigged to switch votes from Trump to Biden. Independent audits and reviews in multiple states of the machines found no evidence of this, and Dominion ultimately filed multiple defamation lawsuits against individuals and media outlets that promoted these nonsense claims. Courts found no basis for the allegations. Major networks have since issued retractions or settlements regarding the false reporting. Voting machines are tested, audited, certified before being used. They're subject to multiple layers of security, and the idea that widespread machine manipulation could have gone undetected is implausible. Another claim from Trump's camp was large numbers of non-citizens voted illegally in 2020, skewing the results for Biden. However, voter registration systems, including in states with strong voter ID laws, are designed to prevent non-citizens from voting. In addition to this, even if you could prove that non-citizens were voting, you would then have to demonstrate that it favored one candidate or the other. And of course, there's no evidence of that either, because there's no evidence of any of it. Investigations into claims of illegal voting by non-citizens found no evidence that it's happening on any scale that would affect even a single state. The notion of millions of illegal votes cast by undocumented immigrants is baseless, and it is a talking point meant to stoke fear. Illegal voting is rare, and even when it occurs, it is often caught and prosecuted, and it is at least 50% of the time committed by Republicans. I won't say almost all the time. We'll just say at least 50% of the time. So now we get to real ways we should actually be worried somebody could steal an election. Election subversion through key positions. And what you'll notice is that Donald Trump is already doing or planning to do most of these things. One of the most realistic ways to steal an election is controlling key positions in the electoral process. If Trump or his allies were to install loyalists in positions like secretaries of state or election boards, they could refuse to certify legitimate results, creating chaos. This could happen in swing states where a small margin would decide the winner of the state. And if officials loyal to Trump refuse to certify a Biden win, it could throw the election process into doubt, especially if courts don't act quickly. Trump is already succeeding in getting loyalists appointed at local election boards in many states. He's already doing it. Number two, legislative manipulation. Another pathway is through state legislatures. Some swing states have Republican-controlled legislatures that could potentially pass laws letting them override the popular vote and appoint their own electors. This would exploit ambiguity in election law. It would rely on courts to decide, is this legislature's claim legitimate about supposed fraud, even if there's no evidence? And they're trying this in Georgia already. I reported to you several weeks ago that there is a change to election law in Georgia that lets what are not normally just perfunctory approvals of a precinct or county's vote count. It allows the people in those positions to say, I think there's something wrong here, unprecedented and dangerous. Number three, Supreme Court decisions. A Supreme Court ruling on election law could open the door for legal maneuvers that weaken the electoral process. For example, If the court were to rule in favor of limiting mail-in voting or upholding a restrictive voter ID law that disproportionately affects one group versus another, that could impact results. Conservative justices on the court have already signaled a willingness to reinterpret certain aspects of election law, like the independent state legislature theory, which would give state legislatures way more power over election rules. And of course, we have a very conservative Supreme Court, 3 justices nominated by Trump himself. Number 4, voter suppression. Voter suppression, like limiting early voting, restricting mail-in ballots, purging voter rolls, implementing strict voter ID. These actions disproportionately impact communities that tend to vote more for Democrats than Republicans. And these laws make it more difficult for certain groups, usually it's minority, low income, and elderly voters, makes it more difficult for certain groups to cast ballots. And if you can depress turnout strategically in key areas with these tactics, you could tip the scales of a state. You'll notice that the Republican Party and Trump specifically have been working on this for years as it is. And number 5, disinformation and chaos. Spread disinformation, spread false claims about voting procedures, fraud, candidate legitimacy, confuse voters, reduce turnout. And these are efforts designed just to make people distrust the system and say, I might stay home, or I got the wrong voting day, or I got the wrong information about whether I need an ID or where to vote or whatever. By creating enough doubt in the outcome, bad actors can force a situation where election officials halt certification or the public even demands a redo because of the chaos that was caused. So as you can see here, the real threat to American democracy and the real opportunity to steal an election, it's not from mythical voter fraud that Trump and his allies claim. It's not from messing with voting machines or anything like that. It's from the exploitation of loopholes, voter suppression, and manipulating the electoral process. And Trump is already doing most of the stuff I mentioned. If you make a concerted effort to subvert the election system through these mechanisms, you could, in theory, overturn the will of the voters. So it's crucial that Americans remain vigilant and ensure that democratic norms are upheld. But most importantly, with such little time to go, our best bet, dare I say, our only bet, is to overwhelm the vote to get such a massive victory that none of this stuff would work. It's up to us to make it happen.